Hello everybody, welcome to the Steelfist podcast. Today we're going over Steelfist Avalanche, which just took place on January 18th. So we're just going to recap the card pretty quickly, kicking off with our first fight of the night, which was Jaden Burrow coming out of Empower Fitness, my gym, versus William Carasoza representing Cache Valley MMA. Both of these guys came out swinging. William Carasoza definitely had better defensive responsibility, a little bit more accuracy on his punches. They were both kind of tagging each other up in the exchanges, but basically every exchange that they had, William Carasoza was able to kind of get the better end of all of them. He got a little bit of a knockdown slip pretty early on, where he was able to land some strikes along the fence, and then wasn't too much longer after that. He got Jaden up against the cage and was able to land an uppercut or a right overhand, I can't remember exactly which one, where he was able to finish off the fight. So William, having coming back, you know, it's hard as a coach and as a fighter to prepare for a debuter or to prepare for someone who you don't have any footage of. We weren't able to find really what William's strong suit was. We assumed coming from Cache Valley MMA that he was going to be a grappler, so we were working a lot of counter wrestling and just kind of engaged into a brawl. But as a coach, I'm happy with how Jaden performed. Just need to work on his defense a little bit better and sharpen up some positional stuff. William Carasoza looking really good, able to come in and get his hand raised pretty quickly within the first round. Moving on, we had Chris Carrillo up against Dylan Smith. Chris Carrillo representing the Pit, and Dylan Smith, another fighter out of Cache Valley MMA. Chris Carrillo has a boxing background. I believe he says he's 6-2 or 6-3 in boxing. So he has quite a few boxing matches, and he's really been able to show that in these past couple fights. His boxing and jiu-jitsu is really good, so he's able to keep it up on the feet where he wants it, and if it gets down, he's able to engage his jiu-jitsu, where he's been able to get a few submission wins. His striking is super slick, very accurate, mixing up the targets, and for being a 125-pounder, he's super powerful. Dylan just wasn't really able to get his match going, wasn't able to get his game going. This was his second fight after about a 9-year layoff. He fought back in August, I believe, with Crown, and now he has returned back to the cage. I'm sure we'll see Dylan back, but Chris Carrillo, congratulations on getting another win. He is now 4-1, so hopefully he has a title fight coming up. It would be awesome to see him be able to compete at that level. All right, next we had Julian Plaza coming in against Justin Frady. We don't really know much about Justin Frady. We weren't, he comes from an independent gym training with his brother Talos Frady, so we haven't been able to, so we were not really sure what to expect, but all of it kind of got thrown out the window with Julian Plaza just needing 2 strikes to finish out the fight. An overhand where he stepped back into southpaw and was able to line up a head kick. First time I ever saw him fight, I knew how good he was almost immediately. He's a fantastic fighter. He beats me up in sparring all the time, so you know, he's got a big future ahead of him. Coming in his first MMA fight and getting a submission within a minute, and now he's coming in and getting a knockout within a minute. He's super well-rounded, always training and always growing. Super excited to see his career. As for Justin Frady, I hope he's doing well, and I hope we get to be able to see him back, just so we can see a little bit more out of him than we were able to see in this fight. 6 seconds is all that Julian needed, and now he's on to the next one. So hopefully we get to see him compete on a little bit higher level guys and work toward a title fight. Okay, next we had Caleb Jordan coming in against Micah Murdoch. Micah Murdoch, this is his first fight with Steelfist. He's 2-1 over with Fierce Fighting Championship, coming in to face Caleb Jordan. Caleb Jordan is associated teammate of Walker Pelto. Walker Pelto training at Memento Mori, who was Micah Murdoch's last loss. And so coming up against someone from a similar team, similar background, in Caleb Jordan. Caleb Jordan with Colossal Fight Company. And this was a super fun grappling match between the two. Caleb was able to maintain a pretty dominant first round, keeping up solid position for the whole entire time. Second round's kind of back and forth, a little bit too close to call, but Caleb Jordan was able to just do a little bit more damage, a little bit more submission attempts and effective grappling in that second round. The third round, Micah Murdoch was able to carry it away with some pretty dominant wrestling of his own, maintaining top position throughout the whole entire time. It was a split decision loss, so it really could have gone either way, but this was also a pretty fantastic fight between the two. Caleb Jordan now 3-0 at 170 pounds, potentially putting him up for a title fight. There's a couple people in the 170 pound weight class I would like to see him come up against. As for Micah Murdoch, he's working with Agema, so he's always in the gym, always working with some super solid guys, and I'm sure we will see him back soon enough. All right, next we had Dalton Clark coming in against Daniel Simi. Dalton Clark did really good about maintaining cage control, keeping Daniel up against the cage the whole entire time, but just wasn't very aggressive with his striking. He was mostly just point fighting, little leg kicks, poking out jabs, and every time Daniel would try and get in and land, Daniel was just landing far more effectively than Dalton was able to. For these guys being heavyweights, it was a pretty consistent pace throughout, so you didn't really see some drastic fall off from super high pace at the beginning until doing absolutely nothing by the third round. They kept a pretty consistent point fighting pace throughout the whole entire time, but the difference here was the power brought in by Daniel Simi, and you would expect that power coming from, for one, he's Tongan, they're all super powerful, and he's working with Ezekiel Latu, and all those guys are just heavy hitters. Congratulations, Daniel Simi, on your debut and getting the win. And as for Dalton Clark, I'm sure we will see him back soon enough, training down with the Brute Force Fight Academy guys. They've got a super solid team, and I always love to see them come in and improve. Moving on, we had Nicholas Jackson coming in against Linnell Woodhouse. Linnell Woodhouse representing Colossal Fight Company, and Nicholas Jackson, I believe, is independent. I could be wrong, but Colossal Fight Company coming in and going 3-0 for the night. Linnell Woodhouse just using his grappling again. We saw his strength in his grappling in his first fight with Steelfist, and he was able to put that on display again, was able to get a pretty good takedown. Nicholas Jackson did really good after the first couple takedown attempts to create scrambles and just keep on moving, but after a minute, the strength of Linnell was a little bit too much for him to bear, and he was able to get some pretty solid ground and pound, maintaining position super well. So this fight took place at about 190 pounds. It was a light heavyweight because it was a short notice replacement for Nicholas Jackson coming in. And Linnell Woodhouse, I'm sure, is probably going to return back down to that 185 pound weight division. And so far, he's been able to close out his fight super quickly using his grappling, and can't wait to see what's next for him. As for Nicholas Jackson, it was his first time back in almost a year, so hopefully he has made some improvements. It was just an off night for him. Hopefully he's part of a team, a gym, getting actual work in and improving. So I'm sure we will be able to see him back. He's a very tough competitor, regardless of wins or loses. Always like to see him come in and put on his best against some guys from legitimate gyms in the state. Moving on, we had Mason Hansen up against Aiden Robinson. This was a fight of the night and a very well matched up fight between the two. Aiden Robinson had a slight edge in the striking, whereas Mason had a slight edge in the grappling. And most of his fight took place on the ground. Mason, when he was on the bottom position, just constantly throwing up submissions. When he was on the top, constantly advancing position and attempting submissions. Aiden was doing a really good job on the feet about distributing damage, but Mason's effective grappling just kind of overtook that, throwing in a bunch of submissions that looked super tight. There were some of those that I thought for sure were probably the end of the fight, but Aiden's tough, and he was able to keep in the fight. He was able to get a slam on Mason, land some pretty good ground and pound. And the third round was just Aiden Robinson, his striking, working with the Empower Muay Thai team, the other Empower. He was able to come in and just put a display on for his striking, landing some pretty crisp shots on Mason, who stayed in the fight and was just able to survive that third round and get the win. Super great fight for both of these guys. Cannot wait to see what is next for both of them. Donnie Ferris coming in from Colossal Fight Company up against Daniel Salas from Fight City. Donnie Ferris was able to really come in and implement his game and shut down Daniel Salas. Daniel Salas is a little bit of an unorthodox striker. There's unorthodox in the you don't know what you're doing, and unorthodox because you created your own style. And Daniel Salas just really has his own style where he's very effective, and it's hard to see a lot of his strikes coming. Donnie Ferris just didn't even really test with it. He was able to get him to the cage, get the takedown. Second round, able to catch a kick where he was able to get the takedown and eventually advance position into a submission. So Donnie Ferris, moving on, I believe this was probably putting him right back into title contention. He might be fighting for a title really soon here. And as for Daniel, working with Fight City, I hope to see him continue to improve his ground game. Next we had Daniel Martinez coming in against Jordan Gonzalez. Jordan was pretty dominant with his grappling, just able to maintain position, putting on submission attempts and control. Daniel found really good success in the second round with reversing the takedowns, reversing the position, and landing some damage. And then the third round, Jordan came back in and was just able to get his control. Daniel, for coming in a weight class, he looked substantially shorter than Jordan. He looked pretty big and muscular. Like, he didn't really look super undersized for 135 pounds. And for guys that are built like he was, it's really hard to submit them. It's really hard to wrestle with them. He did a really good job of staying in the fight and trying to get it back to the feet where he was having more success. But Jordan would catch him on the blitzes as he's coming in. He'd duck under for the takedowns. He'd get to the fence for the takedowns. So Jordan's grappling here was on full display and looking really good. So props to both of these guys, and congratulations to Jordan to getting the fight done. Moving on, we had our main event, Cole Faust coming in against Owen Robinette. This was really just a repeat of the first fight for the most part, but even more dominant on the end of Cole Faust. He really didn't give Owen any chance of dealing any damage to him, throwing up any submission attempts. I know there was a couple submission attempts in the first fight and a position reversal in the first fight, but Cole Faust really just held the position, was able to do a lot of damage, use his elbows, which he hadn't been able to do in their previous fight as they were amateurs, and was just super dominant this whole entire time. Didn't really take any damage, and he looked super good, and he was able to finish out the fight with about 40 seconds left with a heel hook. Cole Faust, 3-0 now as a professional. Can't wait to see what is next for him. Always improving and just putting on super good shows. So congratulations to Cole Faust and all the winners. And as for everything else, we will be back on March 8th with the next Steelfist event. The final 4 fights are fantastic. It's a super stacked card, so you guys won't want to miss that one. I will see you all soon.